Wild Health is about optimizing you. We use genomics, blood work, biometrics, microbiome assessment, many other tests, and a conversation with you to come up with a full health optimization plan. What's the perfect diet, exercise, and supplement plan for you and only you? The Wild Health podcast is about optimizing all of us. Here we cover the cutting-edge science that gives you the base to be able to apply the personalized plan we give you as a patient. To sign up as a patient, go to wildhealth.com. Or if you're a physician or health coach and you want to learn how to do this for your patients, we're happy to help as well. Wildhealth.com for all the information on becoming a patient or working with us.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Wild Health Podcast. We're a genetics-based precision medicine company that's exploring all the big questions around holistic health, wellness, and performance optimization. If you're tired of the traditional healthcare system and want to sign up as a member with us, head over to wildhealth.com. And if you're someone who's looking for a high-touch, all-inclusive concierge medical experience specifically designed for executives and high performers, check out our premium program at wildhealth.com/premium. Now let's get into it.
What's up, Carl? You think the internet overlords will give us enough bandwidth to be able to get this one done today?
Probably not. Is Monsanto listening again? Something?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Carl just disappeared.
Carl just got smoked off the planet.
Yeah. You know, I was looking at, we were both running speed tests because we've been having like pixelated issues with our internet. And you know what the analogy I thought of while I was looking at my speed test for my internet was mitochondria. That's what I was thinking. I was thinking
Really?
that, mitochondria, they power like everything going on in our body. And I think that the internet powers everything going on in my professional life.
Oh, I see how you made that leap there. That was good. I was trying to figure out how you were gonna make that all. I do. Because I was thinking something different when this was all happening. I was just thinking like how annoyed I was your internet sucks so bad, but that's not all I had.
Yeah, you weren't the only one annoyed about it. All right, we were gonna do this one last week, and then we pivoted into the nuances of actually trying to provide medical care for patients when they have more than one problem at a time, as patients tend to do. I think
that's it's like a nice way of saying like, okay, Carl, you can go ahead and record your rant about whatever you're thinking about right now, and we'll talk about mitochondria later.
If we can't let Carl be Carl, there's no point to the podcast. That's all I got to say. All right, we're going to talk about mitochondria today, though. So mitochondria, if there was a bingo for electron mitochondria, center square on that bingo would be mitochondria are the powerhouses of the cell. I feel like that's just what you always hear about mitochondria. Ultimately, or essentially, mitochondria are these tiny organelles. So they're like things that live within our cells. And they live within the cells of almost all eukaryotic organisms, including humans. So all the mammals out there, plenty more animals besides just mammals. And they are responsible for producing most of the cell's energy in the form of adenosine triphosphate or ATP.
Can I ask a question? You may know this or not, but does the theory, like I remember learning this repetitively, but is the theory still like evolutionarily mitochondria were bacteria and then got integrated into eukaryotic cells? Is that still a thing? Is that still a theory? I don't actually know that. I feel like I should.
I don't know if that's been debunked or not, but definitely that's what they taught us when we were back in med school, is they taught us that this was a co-evolutionary scenario where some ancient bacteria started living symbiotically within our cells and turned into mitochondria.
And I wonder if we just lost some I don't know, biologists that are like,
If there's a biologist listening, Already I think I lost them by saying eukaryotic organisms, and they were like, "That's actually not technically correct, Mike. You messed something up there." Anyway, mitochondria they do a lot more than just produce energy. They are responsible for cellular respiration, so the process by which cells convert glucose and oxygen into energy. We need that in order to survive, like in all of our cells, so pretty important. They play a huge role in calcium homeostasis, so muscle contraction, nerve signaling, cell division, all processes that depend on calcium homeostasis. They play a role in programmed cell death or apoptosis, and we've talked about apoptosis in the past and programmed cell death. So this is a process that gets rid of damaged or old cells that aren't functioning at their best, and this is important for getting rid of senescent cells that can lead to inflammation, and apoptosis is one of the pathways that we think that deliberate time-restricted feeding or prolonged fasting tends to target in terms of sort of a cellular cleanup. And then, like, last big category, mitochondria are a major source of reactive oxygen species, which can be damaging, but they also have a system in place to neutralize and eliminate excess reactive oxygen species. So, mitochondria are yes, they're at the core of our metabolism. They're at the core of energy production, and they play vital roles in our body. So I'm going to give them center square. I think they're the powerhouses of the cell.
Yeah. I mean, when you start saying like cellular respiration and all energy production, or energy production, and then killing off, the bad cells, and then just controlling all reactive oxygen species. That's just essentially what makes us human, especially if you integrate calcium homeostasis and actually being able to move muscle. I don't know what else there is, buddy. There's not much else.
Yeah, we're not here without our mitochondria. So, I want to put in a disclaimer here, which is, I feel like the term mitochondrial health has been tossed around in the sort of functional medicine, integrative medicine space for a long time. And it was definitely like my mitochondria helped me roll my eyes when I heard that term thrown around, because it was just this sort of vague, like, yeah, you should have healthy mitochondria. Like, that sounds like a really good thing. But do we have any studies that show that mitochondrial function or increased mitochondrial density actually translates into patient or human-oriented outcomes? And the answer is, yeah, actually we do. And I was skeptical until I looked into it. And now I'm not skeptical. So not to say that everything that's touted as something that will boost your mitochondrial health actually will, but boosting mitochondrial health is something that I think is worth spending some time together on a podcast talking about. So I'd start off with cognitive function. I think, obviously, like, preventing cognitive decline and keeping us thinking our best is a pretty important thing for most people listening. Mitochondria play a vital role in cognitive functioning. The brain's one of the most energy-dependent organs in the body, so needs a ton of ATP, which is produced by mitochondria. And there's a number of different ways that mitochondria can be involved in cognitive functioning. So they all come back to what we already talked about, basically. Energy metabolism, neurotransmitter production, calcium homeostasis, there's calcium again, oxidative stress, and then mitochondrial DNA. And this is cool. You remember what's different about mitochondrial DNA, Carl, from way back in med school?
Mitochondrial DNA? It's from your mom, but...
Yeah, that's the special thing about mitochondrial DNA, right? But your copies of your mitochondrial DNA just come from mom. Dad has no role in giving you your mitochondrial DNA. So it's separate from the nuclear DNA found in the nucleus, which is one copy from mom, one from dad. And mutations in the mitochondrial DNA can lead to dysfunction in mitochondria, which can cause cognitive impairment and neurodegenerative diseases. So more of a rare thing, but mitochondrial DNA can also play a role. So studies that have looked at mitochondrial function and cognitive function study in the Journal of Neuroscience found that mitochondrial dysfunction in the brain was associated with impaired cognitive performance in aging mice, those poor aging mice. Another study, let's go to some humans, published in the Journal of Alzheimer's Disease, found that mitochondrial dysfunction was linked to cognitive impairment in patients with Alzheimer's, as well as significantly associated with cognitive performance in healthy adults. So improving mitochondrial function, well, we don't really have prospective data on humans there that I was able to find, but in mice again, improving mitochondrial function with a mitochondrial targeted antioxidant improved cognitive performance in aging mice. So I think there's definitely, it's not a big cognitive, no pun intended, leap to say like mitochondrial function is going to be important for brain function, right? Just given the link with how much the brain needs energy. But I think there is a signal there.
Yeah, I mean, the study I want to see is, but I'm never going to see, is that you do said intervention to improve mitochondrial density, and then we show that you improved mitochondrial density, and then that translates to improved cognitive function or reduction in cognitive decline. I don't think you're ever going to get that, because in order to show you're improving mitochondrial density in your brain, like you can show that in mice, but not in humans, right?
You'd have to.
You gotta get a brain biopsy to show that.
Yeah, it's hard to account for the. It's hard to preserve the potential improvement in cognitive function when you start taking slices of people's brains out to show that their cognitive function improved. So I'm with you on that one.
I'm sure somebody's going to figure out a more clever way of tagging mitochondria and imaging it, but still, at this point, like mice, we're going to have to look at the mice again.
Yeah. No, and we have a way of sort of discounting animal studies and saying, I mean, all the ethical implications aside around animal research, we're not gonna open that Pandora's box. But just because something has been proven in animals but not in humans doesn't mean that it's not valuable research. And you gotta just be careful about extrapolating.
For sure. I mean, but for me personally, and you like, maybe we've talked about this on the podcast before, but when I see things as research conserved across multiple animal lines, that actually and actually more primitive animals, and then I kind of go, hey, it's so important, whatever this is we're talking about, it's so important that it had to go across multiple animals for us and it actually evolved all the way into us, and we kept it because it was so important. That's kind of the way I think of that. From like a lot of people I know poo-poo some animal studies, but I don't, not all of them. But it'd be nice to replicate it.
Just to put an exclamation point on that, I mean, you look at the longevity research, and so much of the longevity and aging research is done like from yeast and worms all the way up, because these are conserved pathways, right? I mean, when you're talking about something so fundamental to life and to bodies preserving their life, like energy production and, glucose metabolism, it does seem like you'd conserve those and you could probably extrapolate. All right, but if we wanted to get to a study like your dream study, which we're not going to do today, obviously, but you kind of casually mentioned what I'd really like to see is you take some folks with cognitive decline, you improve their mitochondrial function or density, and then you see what happens to their cognitive decline. Talk to me about ways to improve mitochondrial function and density.
Well, I mean, I think there's the way I think about it is several different ways, but the number one thing that is like the thing we say for everything is exercise. I don't know if you've ever heard us talk about that, but I mean, regular physical exercise activity is shown to improve mitochondrial function and increase mitochondrial density at muscle cells. But and the best exercise for that is probably aerobic. But there's also plenty of studies that strength training does this as well. So exercise, one. Diet. So under diet, there's a lot of thoughts you can do there, and there's discussions around antioxidants but also increasing omega-3s in people's diet, I also found some studies around increasing protein intake, and that leading to, and this is going to get super nerdy for you, but is activating mTOR pathways. And if people maybe heard us talk about that, and mTOR activation by protein intake actually promotes mitochondrial biogenesis by inducing the expression of something that's called PGC1 alpha, for those who are really wanting to geek out. But we talk about those two terms for involved in mitochondrial biogenesis. So under diet, so we have diet, we have exercise. One of the ones under diet is adequate protein intake. And then these are all like, going down things we've talked about before, sleep. So, we know that that adequate sleep is essential for mitochondrial function, but when you get into adequate REM and deep sleep, that's when there's circadian rhythm clocks. And like, if you look at a lot of these clock gene activities, they happen inside the mitochondria. That's when if you get into appropriate REM and deep sleep and you have appropriate circadian rhythms, your mitochondria are able to repair themselves and regenerate themselves at those times. So, that's when you get mitochondrial biogenesis. And then there's actually studies on stress reduction and actually cortisol's effect on mitochondrial density. So you get when you have high spiking levels of cortisol, you get this impairment process through multiple signaling pathways for impairing your mitochondrial biogenesis. So the opposite is true. The leap then is if you manage stress well and you manage your cortisol levels well, then you get better mitochondrial biogenesis. And then the same thing happens, we think, with cortisol actually increasing oxidative stress and actually goes through the process of promoting reactive oxygen species. And so we think that there's a relationship there with managing your stress and then therefore having better mitochondrial function, not necessarily increasing mitochondrial density, but having better function and less dysfunction of mitochondria. And then there's the last one, which is my white whale, as you know, which is cold exposure. There's data that's mounting, and maybe you could speak more about this, but definitely data for increasing mitochondrial density in like tissue biopsies, and looking at mitochondrial density in specific muscles with cold exposure. So even like short time periods, like 10 days, in increasing mitochondrial density in your quadricep muscle in healthy adults in 10 days of cold exposure. So 14 degrees Celsius, whatever that is Fahrenheit. That's 10 days. The idea of you can turn your mitochondrial density around with 10 days of an exposure of whatever, that's pretty impressive. Excuse me. So
it's not even that cold, by the way, Carl. It's I used my internal calculator / Google, and that's 57 degrees Fahrenheit.
What? Really?
57.
Wow, that is not that cold.
It's not that cold.
Oh man, the argument against me doing cold plunge is becoming less. It's just
weaker and weaker and weaker.
It's just hard.
Well, for those who don't know, Carl really hates cold plunging, so this is why it's his white whale. I think it's not even the only study showing that cold exposure can work to increase mitochondrial biogenesis. There's a study in the Journal of Strength and Conditioning Research that found that cold water immersion after exercise increased mitochondrial biogenesis in skeletal muscle cells. A review of the literature in Journal of Alternative and Complementary Medicine concluded that cold exposure can increase mitochondrial biogenesis and improve mitochondrial function. So seems like there's a real signal around cold exposure as an effective way to increase mitochondrial density and support function. And
our internet gods seem to have determined that Carl's no longer welcome on the podcast. So I'm going to cut us there and say it's not that surprising that improving mitochondrial health involves the same pathways that we generally talk about in terms of improving health, certainly with regards to exercise. So thanks for listening, everybody. We'll catch you next time.
Hey, everyone. Whether you're a medical practitioner or someone who's just generally interested in precision medicine, we're offering our podcast listeners an exclusive 20% off Wild Health's Precision Medicine Training Program. This 6-month immersive course includes over 50 hours of online curriculum, as well as live webinars and practical experiences. If you're already a health coach or medical professional, this program teaches you how to provide your patients with more personalized, genetics-based care. Better yet, Wild Health's Precision Medicine Training Program is accredited by the National Board of Health and Wellness Coaching and fully prepares you to sit for the NBHWC exam. To learn more about the program and apply today, head to wildhealth.com/education and be sure to mention the podcast for 20% off. Space is limited. Offer applies to June applicants only.